Hi, this is Craig Stevens, and this podcast is directly related to understanding how process groups of project management and the knowledge areas of project management fit together with the life cycles of project management. So we're going to try to correlate all of these subjects together so you can see it in one picture. Now, to find that picture, you go to the Westbrook Stevens website. So this actual page that this material is on westbrook-stevens.com/project_management1.htm. When you get there, you scroll down to Figure PM2. Figure PM2 is a table, and I'm looking at it right below the camera. So I brought the actual website up. I'm scrolling down, and I found the figure I'm looking for. Now, along the left-hand column, the vertical axis, left-hand column, these are the titles of all the knowledge areas at the top, and then the last two columns is the second from the bottom columns is divided up into KA represents the knowledge area. That's all those sections above it. And then life cycle represents life cycle, and process groups represent process groups. Now, the first thing you notice about this figure is that there's a bunch of different colors on it. Well, each project group is color-coded for the purpose of this page to explain it. Now, if you see green, green is the initiation process group. So all the processes that fit into initiating the project or initiating an activity, a phase of the project, will be found there. Planning. Planning is seen as color-coded with blue, and everything related to planning will be colored blue. Execution is, you use a dark color of brown, and the monitoring control, we use a kind of a lighter flesh color, and then a closing would be in red. So those are the colors. Now, again, let's start at the very top row, and let's look at all the different colors. I see green, blue, brown, the flesh color, and the red. So now it tells me that in the integration knowledge area that you're going to have to look at integrating issues related to initiation, and you're also going to have to look at planning issues, and you're also going to look at execution issues, and you're also going to look at monitoring control, and you're also going to have to know a little bit about closing. Okay, if you go to the blue section, you'll see that blue is really found in a couple places. Now, to understand why it's divided up like that, we have to go back to the bottom of the page, and remember, you see KA and a 45-degree angle line and life cycle. That means that KA is everything above that, life cycle is everything to the right of that. So each of the columns are labeled by a different life cycle. There are a bunch of different life cycles. I like using 4 life cycles because it simplifies everything. Usually you can divide all the other life cycles up into some words that means these 4, and some of them may have sub-phases to it. And we'll talk about that on a later podcast. But for example, we have concept phase. Now, the concept phase in a project is coming to an understanding of what that project's all about. The planning phase of the project is to actually go out and put the detailed plans together related to that project. The implementation or execution phase is just that. You're actually doing the work in order to make that project successful. And remember, we talked about change in the very first podcast. Well, this one is the whole process of integrating that change that you're trying to make. And then the last life cycle is closure, transition. You can use a whole bunch of different words here. It means the same thing. You're turning over, you're transitioning the project from an actual project in progress to an actual operation. Whoever's going to actually be using your work or living in the house you just made. Okay, now we talked a little bit about how complicated it was for me to understand that process groups and life cycles are different things. and the process groups can actually all be found in one life cycle phase. And that's a little hard to understand, but that's the difference. These process groups are those groupings of processes that fall under the category of whatever we're talking about. So there's processes that fall under the category of initiating. Now you'll see on this figure, I just simplified it and I said, well, let's pretend like all the process groups fits in with the life cycles in this particular example. So now, initiating is really kind of what the concept phase is all about. So in the concept phase, you would expect to have all the initiating processes that would go on in order to make your project successful and to understand your project. Planning is exactly that. It is all the detailed planning and all those tools we use and all those estimating, time, cost, material, and all that estimating. So that's what the planning is all about. Well, in the life cycle, the planning would kind of overlap the concept phase and take up most or all the planning phase. The implementation, now implementation is all about executing, and it's about making things happen. So the process groups, those grouping of processes, those systems you use in order to execute, we'd be finding implementation and execution without too much imagination. Now monitoring and control really fits during the whole process where you're trying to implement the project. It really comes into play majority of the time in the execution and implementation, because as you're executing, you're trying to figure out how you're doing. You're monitoring and controlling things. Now, really, it could go in each of the phases, like we talked about, I think, before. It could be in any one of these phases, or all these phases, or just spread out across the project. But the monitoring and controlling will definitely be heavily used in the execution phase. So all those processes related to monitoring and controlling would be in the execution phase. Closing. Now, closing sounds like a closing phase, right? So that's where that will be found. So now those knowledge areas, in order to master those processes, you have to know something, right? So those knowledge areas, let's see if we can overlap those, see if that makes more sense now. Integration, everything needs to be known, right? Scope management, you need to know something about planning. That's what scope management's all about. Time management, and also with scope management, you also have to monitor and control it over the process, the whole process of the project. So it's really planning and monitoring control. And again, monitoring control is through all these knowledge areas too, because that's what you're monitoring and controlling. You're monitoring and controlling scope. You're planning scope. So that's how that works. Time management. Well, you're planning time management, right? You're planning for time, and then throughout the whole project, in the execution, in this figure, in the execution phase, you're actually monitoring, controlling the time, right? So cost management, you're planning for cost management, and then you're monitoring, controlling it. Quality management, well, this is starting to look a little, there's three of them here. So you're actually planning for quality, and then you're executing with quality in mind, using your quality management plans and your processes, and you're also monitoring quality along the way. Same thing with communication, same thing with HR management, and same thing with procurement management. Now, procurement management, we complicate it a little bit more. Procurement management, we're planning for it, we're executing it, what we said we're going to deliver, and then we're monitoring, controlling it, and then we're closing it down at the end. Risk management, you see that in planning and monitoring control, and that makes sense too. Now that's all the time I have, and I hope you understand how it fits together. My name is Craig Stevens. To reach me, you contact Craig A. Stevens at westbrookstevens.com, and I look forward to talking to you, and I'll see you in the next podcast. Thank you for tuning in.